Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of the From Cameras to Couches podcast. I, as usual, am your host, Zach Davis.
And I am your co-host, Emmy Davis.
And we are here to bring you another Davis Family Classic that's been hot on the mind here lately. We put it up to a vote for you guys to check it out, and this is the winner. So we're going to be doing What About Bob today. What About Bob is a 1991 comedy directed by Frank Oz and starring Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss. Emily, how long have we been watching What About Bob?
I remember the first time we ever watched What About Bob, we lived in Washington State. I was probably around
7 or 8?
7, 8, 9, somewhere in that. And there was a massive snow. It started snowing when we started the movie. And by the time the movie was over, we went outside and there were
a foot of snow?
Yeah, at least. I remember our Boston Terrier jumped off the porch and he completely vanished because he fell into the snow off the steps. It was great.
That's undoubtedly a memory I associate with this movie.
Very specific memory.
Back in 2009, 2010, something like that, a long time ago. But we watched it on VHS. Mm-hmm. We've been watching it ever since. This is definitely one of the funniest movies of the early 90s. It's critically acclaimed as so, and it's got so much flair. Murray and Dreyfuss are just so perfect in their roles here. But let's talk about it a little bit. Let's do a quick run over of the events of this movie. So this movie focuses around two main characters, really, Bob Wiley and Dr. Leo Marvin. Bob Wiley is a absolutely neurotic and multi-phobic guy that lives in New York City. The stress of living in the city is some people can handle it, some people cannot. There are two kinds of people in this world: those that can handle New York City and those that cannot. Bob is one of the people that cannot. He has fears of germs, he has fears of people, he has fears of elevators, he has fears of everything.
He has fears of getting illnesses and dying of them, and he says, if I fake it, then I don't have it.
Exactly. He's a master of
he's just a neurotic little guy,
being afraid of everything possible around him. But he has a therapist that keeps him going. He is ultra reliant on the therapist. It discusses every single one of his major and minor issues with him, mostly minor. But the therapist decides to retire. He's gonna go out of business, so he has to recommend Bob to a new therapist, of which he chooses Dr. Leo Marvin, a extremely egotistical man that is writing a self-help book entitled Baby Steps, in order to kind of just make a man of himself, I guess.
He's also reached a good amount of success, so he's definitely a real prick about that. He's appearing on Good Morning America because of his book, and he's just a jerk to all of his coworkers.
He's
colleagues, I should say.
A huge tool, but the man that will make him even with everybody else walks in the door, and his name is Bob Wiley, and he's this chaotic, neurotic guy, and Leo's like, all right, here's what you should do. Read a copy of my book. I'm going on vacation. I'll see you in a month. And Bob starts reading the copy of the book, which of course is Baby Steps, and he starts taking bigger and bigger baby steps towards what he wants in life, which is really just to talk to this therapist again as soon as possible. So Dr. Leo Marvin and his family, including his wife Faye, daughter Anna, and son Siggy, all go out to Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. They go on their family vacation, and they are haunted by Bob, who can't get in touch with Dr. Leo Marvin.
I'd say Leo is more haunted by Bob.
Yeah, for sure, for certain. Yeah, you go well.
The family grows quite fond of him.
The family likes him, but Leo is just away on vacation. Bob is hunting Leo down in any way possible, going so far as to play a detective that's investigating Bob's suicide to try and find out who his therapist was so he can get in contact with him. So he finds out they're in Lake Winnipesaukee. He goes to Lake Winnipesaukee. He's screaming for Leo all over the downtown where the bus drops him off, which is also another big hurdle in his life, is getting on the bus. He eventually finds Leo, and Leo agrees that Bob will leave him alone if he calls Bob from the coffee shop every day.
No, just once.
Or just
once.
Yeah,
he says, buy a bus ticket, go over to the coffee shop, I will call you at 2:00.
He agrees, but what Leo doesn't know is that the townspeople of this town are catching on to his pretension. And is it the Grossmans?
The Gundersons.
The Gundersons, thank you. The Gundersons are a family that live in town who were outbid by Dr. Leo Marvin for the lake house that they really wanted. So they decided to get a little payback on him and drop Bob off at his house, at the lake house. Bob gets to introduce himself to the family, who immediately take a liking to him, and Leo is like, this is going extremely poorly. Bob is told by Leo that he needs to take a vacation, and Bob, not having taken a vacation before, is now seeing in front of him
your problems.
What vacation looks like. So instead of going back to the city and taking a vacation to Jamaica or anything, he decides he is going to stay right there in Lake Winnipesaukee. So
this is also somebody that's never left New York before. He, in addition to being very connected and very dependent upon Leo Marvin, he also has zero interest in going somewhere new again.
Yeah. He's happy that he has like the in of somebody else on a town outside of New York.
Staying with the Gundersons. He's set.
He's in perfect shape. So
don't hassle him. He's local.
Over the course of the next day, Bob shows his face on his vacation. He goes sailing with Leo's daughter Anna. He teaches Leo's son how to jump or how to dive into the water, which is something that Leo was not able to accomplish, and Siggy is like terribly afraid of, but Bob helps him to overcome his fears.
Well, what happens is Bob asks Siggy to teach him how to dive.
Oh, yeah. And that's right, yeah. And
he's demonstrating, and he ends up diving.
He dives in, and Leo sees it, and he's immediately just like terribly, terribly mad. So he goes over and he pushes Bob off the dock.
He, like, in a rush of excitement to get to Siggy, he, like, just kind of shoves him into the water, and Bob, being terrified of everything, freaks out, and the whole family's, like, trying to grab his hands, and he's, like, sitting there going, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die?
It's so
He has a life jacket on.
Yeah, he's floating around with a life jacket on. Faye makes Leo apologize to Bob and invites him over for dinner. Bob,
which I love the apology, by the way. It's nonverbal. It's literally like they're probably like 20 yards away. Leo looks at him, and Bob just kind of like just tilts his head to the side and like nods. He's like, and then that's it. That's
like,
the apology.
Our eyes meeting was the apology. So Bob goes to dinner at their house, and there's a massive storm outside, which causes Bob to have to stay the night at their house. Now,
because he walks everywhere.
Yeah, he's never driven. He's probably. I mean, the bus is quite an event for him. I can only imagine what being in a car would be like when he's the one driving it. So he stays the night, but the next morning, Leo has a team of people from Good Morning America coming in to do an interview on him about his new book. So the only condition is that Bob has to be gone before the Good Morning America crew arrives, and then they arrive early. And then they start finding out, as Leo's getting set up and he's trying to do his interview and everything, he's having a hard time like conveying what he wants to because Bob is just distracting him the whole time. So the Good Morning America team kind of turns to Bob and finds that the real story is in how this book transformed this man's life. And so the spotlight goes on to him, and Leo is immediately just like furious once again.
And also like just so thrown off, like he's asked a question about, like, he's asked a question, and he had previously prepared for questions not about Bob, and he spits off this answer that we'd seen him rehearsing earlier in the movie that is completely irrelevant to the question, and everyone's like, okay. And then Bob just takes control.
He masters it. This does not please Leo, as has pretty much every single one of Bob's antics over the course of the movie, but he decides he's gonna leave Bob out somewhere. He leaves him in the middle of the road, in the middle of nowhere. Bob has no idea where to go, but Leo then has to make it back over to the lake house. So he spends the afternoon getting delayed various ways, and Bob is having this joyride all the way back to Leo's house in the meantime. So by the time Leo gets to his house, he arrives and finds that there's a surprise birthday party that's been set up for him, and a bunch of people are there, including his sister Lily. And he's fine until he sees Bob come up by his sister Lily and put his arm around her, and it's clear that they've been flirting with each other for the evening. So he goes into an absolute rage and
dives off the porch and
tackles Bob, and Bob is kindly asked to leave because of the state that Leo's in. He has to actually be sedated in order for them to calm him down. So Leo that night decides to abduct Mr. Bob Wiley from the Gundersons, right? I think he's sleeping at the Gundersons.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I think I logged out of the movie.
Yeah.
At that point when I was watching it.
Most recently. Yeah. He steals a bunch of explosives from the general store and abducts Bob and straps him to the explosives and is pretty much just like, I'm going to blow you up. This is called death therapy. And he's completely mad at this point. Leo leaves Bob in the middle of the woods. And with the explosives tied to him. Yeah. And Bob sees it as a metaphor. For he can either overcome his problems and break free from them, or he can just leave himself to die through this death therapy. So he decides he's going to break free of his problems, and he breaks off the restraints and manages to find Dr. Leo, and he's like, I'm cured. And Leo's like, where'd you put the explosives? And he's like, they're in the lake house. The lake house.
He comes out with a birthday cake singing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
Oh, yeah.
And Leo's like, he has just had this moment where, his family thought that he was missing, because, I mean, he had this manic episode, and then he's gone, and they're desperately looking for him, can't find him. And then he's on the dock at their lake house, and they're all like, oh my gosh, Leo, Dad, it's so good to see you, wow. Like, we thought you were, we didn't know where you were. And then Leo's like, it's okay, Bob's gone. And then Bob comes out of the house with the birthday cake. The explosives are in the house. He's like, Bob, where are the bag of explosives I put around your neck? He's like, in the house. And then the house
You can only imagine that the house explodes, much to the joy of the Gundersons.
Which, this is one of my favorite things about this movie, is they're typically just sitting in their boat right off the dock at the Marvin's Lake House.
They're just waiting.
They're some of my favorite characters. I guess that kind of, well, we can wrap up the movie and then I'll get into the Gundersons and characters.
Yeah, for sure. Long story short, the house just absolutely blows to pieces. Leo goes completely catatonic. He goes into an unwakeable vegetable state, where he is just like completely nonverbal and cannot function at all.
He's in a wheelchair.
Months go by, and Bob and his sister Lily Leo's sister Lily are about to get married. At the ceremony, Leo is present, of course, and when the any objections part comes around, that he's unable to say anything, but he's like so desperately trying to say something, and
then they're pronounced
man and wife, and he stands up out of his wheelchair and screams, "No!" And everybody is so lost in the moment of like, he's cured, that they completely disregard what he said. So Bob marries Lily, and the ending scrawl of the movie says that Bob wrote a book that he went back to school, got his PhD in psychology, and wrote a book called Death Therapy, for which Leo is now suing him for the rights. So the end. That's what about Bob. What a magical comedy.
So what about, characters? What about Bob?
Yeah, but let's talk about some characters in this. So Bob's neurosis, as portrayed by Bill Murray, is so perfect. I'm so curious as to how many takes they did for this, because Murray was really nervy over a lot of the filming of this, to the point of being aggressive, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But he was really scared to shoot in New York City and things like that. And when they got out to New Hampshire, things were just a little bit different. And he was at a really, he was coming off of the high, I think, of the major success of his career. And he's in a weird spot right now. Yeah. Post Groundhog Day, post Caddyshack. He's in a weird spot where he's, just kind of savoring the fact that he is himself. So that kind of bled into a little bit of the production, but it also bleeds into a little bit of the character in the form that Richard Dreyfuss is acting against Bill Murray in this. more than he's acting against the character of Bob. I think he's like very obviously trying to do some very Murray kind of things in this.
But he does like a lot of the voices and stuff.
For sure. But he's just so, they're both so much fun to watch because they're like these dueling dragons the whole time. And it's just like, how insufferable can Bob possibly be?
And here's something I have to say. Like, I'm not going to say that all of Leo Marvin's, I keep calling him Dr. Leo Marvin, all of his actions are justified, but his frustration is so fair. Like,
absolutely.
Can you imagine, like, if one of your, like, you're on vacation, one of your drivers showed up, or, like, one of my regulars showed up?
100%.
I would probably act in the same bitchy way, and even if my family's like, oh, but they're nice, and I don't care. Yeah, you just brought my work to my vacation.
It's the magic of it. He's never, I mean, he is a self-righteous person, but he is righteous in his frustration towards this thing. Now, his extent of attempting to murder Bob is a little much, and it is...
And, like, not his lack of graciousness when spending the night and making him stay up until 1 a.m. sitting on the couch in his slicker, about to go send him out into the rain.
But it's certainly...
a little excessive, but...
It lends itself to just the magic of, like, the tagline of the movie, what if a crazy man drove his therapist crazy? And... It's so much fun to just watch them just bastardize each other in every way possible.
And his wife Faye, who I don't remember the actress's name, or she's one of those actresses that you're like, oh, it's that
Julie
lady.
Haggerty is her name.
Thank you. But she is just so soft and gentle, and
she's like, oh, he's so sweet.
She's like, Leo, apologize to him, and she cracks me up. I, above all, love the Gundersons and Gil. Gil's is great. Bob's emotional support fish that he keeps in a jar around his neck for 90% of the movie. And then the Gundersons, obviously, are the people that wanted to buy the lake house. And are they German?
Yeah.
And the lady, literally, this is in my favorite quotes, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it out now. Mrs. Gunderson, when they're first talking about Leo, she's like, that son of a bitch. And Mr. Gunderson's like, she never says that. And then they do it again. And at some point when they're in the boat, like, just quiet, like, I don't remember exactly what line leads up to it, but she ends up seeing Dr. Marvin, and you just hear her yell across the lake, Hitler! And it's just their, again, unjustified hatred. I guess not again, but...
It's like the small town living ideology of everybody knows everybody
like
mixed
you just
with
bought
like
my
the
vacation.
big,
like you bought this as your vacation
therapist
home, and
from
I've been
New York
saving.
just came in here and ruined everything for us. Yeah, what fun. This movie is like infinitely quotable. I have so many quotes written down from this, and like I don't think we've talked about Sahara on the podcast.
No.
Mostly because it's, when you go back and look at it, not a very good movie, but it means so much to how much fun I have watching that movie that it's all
not
of
a
that
great
to
movie,
say,
but
Sahara, Emperor's New Groove, this movie are probably the three biggest quotables in the Davis family. Like, we say lines from these back and forth to each other frequently.
It's like, I don't realize how much I quote these movies. And like, I watched this and I was like, oh, that's what that's from this. That's from this. Okay. Yeah. Like, I mean, one of the most quotable things from this movie is, I feel good, I feel great, I feel wonderful. I feel good, I feel great, I feel wonderful. Me and Mom say that to each other all the time.
Baby like stepping over the elevator.
I'm in the elevator. Yeah. There's a lot of
Davis. There's just so much from this. I like the way that it deals with ego a little bit. I just the way that, like, while Dreyfuss's character is never wrong, he's always an asshole. Yes. He's never not a prick. Like, he's never not a raging douche that's just trying to get ahead. And I don't know, there's just something magical about watching him come apart over the course of this movie, and like one piece at a time, and it's like it's like watching a clay pot just try to hold water, and it's so amazing. Okay, let's move on to some favorite quotes. You want to go first?
When at some point Leo tries to bring Bob to a mental hospital and drop him off there.
I forgot about that.
And the lady in charge is friends with Leo, and she's like, we can only hold him for 24 hours unless the staff like agrees to keep him here for longer, like thinks that he needs to stay here.
I love when they check Leo after.
And within, like, by the time Leo gets home, he gets a phone call from the asylum, from the institute, and he has to go back and pick Bob up because he is cutting it up with all the freaking employees, like all the orderlies and doctors are sitting there, and he's cracking them up. And one of the jokes that he says, he's like, he says, it reminds me of my favorite poem, which is, roses are red, violets are blue, I'm a schizophrenic. And so am I. And that is so freaking funny.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then I guess this kind of goes into this is one of my favorite scenes as a whole. At some point, the lady in charge is like talking to Leo, and she's like, he's just a great guy. Like, I don't really understand why you sent him here. Like, she says, I'm going to save you the embarrassment and give you back his admittance form. And then she's like, Leo, you seem a little stressed. Maybe you should take a vacation. Have you thought about staying here for a few days? And he's like, I'm on vacation.
It's the whole crux of the movie, just right out there in front of you. When Bob is staying at the house,
excuse me.
They're all. I don't think they're sleeping in the same. Yeah, they are sleeping in the same room. No. Leo comes into the room because Siggy and Bob are sleeping in the same room. And so Leo's like
pretending to have Tourette's.
Yeah, they're pretending to have Tourette's and just squealing out like
screaming
curse
obscenities.
Words. And Leo finally like busts into the room and is like, "Be quiet, go to sleep." And he's like, "I'm just trying to get some peace and quiet." And Bob goes, "I'll be quiet." And Siggy goes, "I'll be peace."
It holds up a little peace sign, and then they both like hide behind a pillow and laugh. It's so good.
Oh, it's amazing. I alluded to this one earlier, but there's a quote in this movie that goes, "There are two kinds of people in this world: those who like Neil Diamond and those who do not," and which is just a standalone magic on its own.
I think it's the first line in the movie. Bob goes up to his little fish and he says, "Good morning, Gil."
Good. I said good morning, Gil.
Good morning, Gil. And I say that a lot when people don't hear me.
I do that too.
There's the dinner sequence when it's right before it rains super hard. Leo is just so aggravated with Bob, and he's over it, and Faye is kind of aggravated at Leo because he won't like fully apologize and like be nice, and so there's like all this passive aggression happening like across the table, and Bob's just eating, and he's like, oh,
Faye, the breast.
And, I'm sorry. He asked for more chicken.
Bob, would you like the breast?
No. It's actually, we've been saying that wrong for years.
Oh, no.
Bob asks Leo if he wants the breast because he puts it on his plate, and he's like, oh, wait, Leo, did you want the breast? And then there's his daughter is serving up salad. He says, pile it high and deep, would you?
Pile it high and deep, would you, Faye?
That's another one that we've been saying wrong. It's Anna that's serving the salad. Damn. I know, I was watching it, and I was like, we've been misquoting those two.
Dad, you've been leading me wrong for years.
I think that was Mom. I love you, Mama. And would you get that tomato off of there? And he makes this little face about the tomato. And it's really when he's eating the corn, though, and he's just, and you just see Leo start to crack. And he eventually just screams. He's like, would you stop that?
For our younger audience, plug your ears. One of my favorites is another one of the jokes he's telling to the orderlies when he's in the psychiatric hospital, and he's telling the story about how there's this doctor, and he has a patient in one day, and he starts doing like a Rorschach test. And he starts drawing a picture, and he's like, what do you see? And the guy's like, sex. And then the doctor's like, okay, all right, let's move on to the next one. What do you see here? And he's like, sex. And he draws a couple more pictures, and the guy's like, sex. And he's like, so you're obsessed with sex? And the patient says, well, you're the one drawing all the dirty pictures. It's a great...
We already mentioned that in the
mental
elevator.
Health. I wonder how many mental health jokes were bounced around at the table. Like, do we use this one? Do we use this one? We've heard a lot around set this week. Should we? I feel good. I feel great. I feel wonderful. It is.
Yes. All-timer. At some point when...
You already mentioned that, sorry.
Leo is teaching Siggy how to dive. Siggy always wears black, and Leo asks him, he's like, what's your obsession with black? Or, what does he say?
Why are you always wearing black? What is it with you and your death fixation?
Maybe it's the loss of maybe I'm mourning the loss of my childhood. It's great.
I'm a sailor. I sail.
I'm sailing.
It's when Bob's on the boat with Anna. Good morning, Gil. I said, good morning, Gil.
Oh my gosh, when Leo gets the phone call when Bob Fake says suicide, he says, that patient, the one that called before, he committed suicide. And Faye goes, oh, Leo, how horrible. And Leo goes,
yes.
Oh, well, let's not spoil it. Let's not let it spoil our vacation. And just, like, goes back to sleep.
Another banger is, I think about this almost every time I get on a plane, but when he sits down in the back of the bus when he's first going to Lake Winnipesaukee and he looks at somebody and goes, hi, I'm Bob, would you punch me in the face and knock me out?
Would you just knock me out? Would you just hit me in the face? What if my heart stops beating? What if I'm looking for a bathroom, I can't find it, and my bladder explodes? Is this corn hand shucked? That's another one from the dinner.
Oh man, there's so many. I get dizzy spells, nausea, cold sweats, hot sweats, fever blisters, difficulty breathing, difficulty swallowing, blurred vision, involuntarily trembling, dead hands, numb lips, fingernail sensitivity, pelvic discomfort. So the real question is, what is the crisis, Bob? What is it you're truly afraid of? What if my heart stops beating? What if I'm looking for a bathroom and I can't find it and my bladder explodes?
Leo, I see salt and pepper. Is there a salt substitute?
Salt substitute. Yeah, it's splendid. That's what they call that. Okay, let's move on to favorite scenes. I guess we've kind of...
we can kind of just glaze over it a little bit. We talked about the dinner scene.
Done so many. I love the sailing scene. I love him teaching Siggy how to dive.
Oh, there's actually this one we haven't mentioned. There's a scene, and I always thought it was so odd as a kid, but it's really funny as an adult. There's a scene where Leo and Anna, his daughter, get into it, and Leo has these like puppets that look like them. And he, like, makes her talk to him with the puppet, and at some point the camera focuses just on the puppets as they're, like, waving them at each other and yelling, and it's so freaking funny and weird.
It's great.
And then within the same conversation, she accuses him of not being fun, and he, like, you see his face, he's like, I just use puppets for therapy, why is that not fun?
It's like, this is how I engage patients and all people, why are you not in on this? Yeah, there are so many just fantastic little sequences. I guess we've more or less just done most of the scenes by talking about them. So let's move into internet trivia. Okay, here's the big one. Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss did not get along on set at all, which kind of bleeds in really well into the dynamic of the characters, but there were ashtrays being thrown by Murray at Dreyfuss. There were all kinds of just like bad will. Murray was like drinking on set at one day and like asked for a day off and went into a big tirade and like broke a producer's glasses and threw him across the. It was a big frustration. But ultimately, like they came back years later and were like, we never worked with each other again. And Dreyfuss in 2020 was like, I've long since forgiven him for that. And they're both very coy and smart and very clearly worked with their publicists very closely on their answers for like interviews about the movie where they're just like, oh, you know, that old cad. Yeah, they've long forgiven each other's.
What About Bob was actually released before Groundhog Day, 2 years before.
Oh,
Sorry.
Wow, damn.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
I
guess he was really peaking.
Yeah. I was thinking that.
Because I think Caddyshack is 87, and Kingpin's somewhere in that quadrant, but I think it's well after those. Anyway, Bill wasn't even the first choice to play Bob in the movie. It was Robin Williams. It was going to be Robin Williams, and Patrick Stewart was the first choice for Richard Dreyfuss, or Leo Marvin, whichever one you decide. Yeah, Julie Haggerty, who plays Faye, the mom in the movie, is only 10 years older than the woman that plays the daughter, who was 26 when they filmed this movie and is playing a 16-year-old girl.
I was reminded of this when I was rewatching it. I always think that the daughter is so beautiful.
Yeah,
Anna.
she is.
And she's got that. I love those 90s, the 90s outfits, and just I love that.
They're just going ham and all this 90s New York in the beginning of it. Awesome, very planes, trains, and automobiles. When Faye is tucking in Bob when he's spending the night there, he improvises diving under the sheets head first to get to the head of the bed, and you can see her just dying laughing while it's happening. It's a good one.
Oh gosh, there's a lot of like you can see the boom mic and stuff like that in several shots, and then there's like also one kind of inconsistency with Bob's character. At some point he's in the car with Anna and he gets in the car and he does not buckle his seatbelt and they're driving and he's just unbuckled, and I saw that when I was watching it last night, and I was like, that would just not.
Mr. Safety has never been in a car.
No, I was like, that just would not be.
Maybe just didn't know.
He just hadn't. He'd never been in a car before.
He'd never been in a cab. And in a cab, you don't buckle, I guess. The director, Frank Oz, was extremely concerned that this movie was going to flop and flop hard, because him and Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss all had different opinions of what was making the movie funny. Ultimately, I think what makes the movie funny is just like watching a man who is inspired to drive people to sanity for the sake of money get driven to insanity for the sake of nothing. But it turned out to be a huge commercial success and was the second highest grossing comedy of the year for Touchstone, right behind Father of the Bride.
Father of the Bride.
First part.
That's actually my double feature.
That I actually, for double features, I had Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh, just Steve Martin all the way, huh?
Yeah, Steve Martin and, my God, why am I blanking on this? Michael Caine just going absolutely hard over the course of the movie. Sometimes at the expense of some groups of people, very heavily so, but there are so many gags in it. It is so much like this dynamic of like dueling dragons trying to go up against each other and one up each other in comedic situations. I absolutely love it. So
I just had Father of the Bride because it's 90s comedy.
Yeah, it certainly hits that quadrant. I'm kind of partial to part 2. And I think it's just because I've seen it more. Kind of like with Sister Act 2. Like I'm.
Yeah, Sister Act 2 is much, much funnier than the first one, I think.
I totally agree. And I mean, when Jesus much more... washed my sins away, that will always be rent free. Gotta love the 90s. They don't make stuff like they used to. All right. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps up our episode about What About Bob. We'll probably be doing a roundup here in the near future. There's some news to talk about.
Speaking about Bob, I've seen Bob Trevino Likes It is in theaters right now. Go see it. I went and saw it the other night. The theater was in tears. It was freaking beautiful. Yeah,
playing at the Regal West right now. So if you have quick access to downtown Knoxville, check it out. It's very, very much worth it. I have a sneaking actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say that it's going to be on streaming soon because go out and support this movie in a theater.
Yes.
It's super, super awesome.
It's worth seeing in a theater too.
Yeah, for sure. There's also like one more piece of news that I wanted to note just because of its relevancy, but Mr. Val Kilmer has passed away, which is a damn shame, and he was certainly like a great actor and representation of his generation. He's been struggling with throat cancer ever since I believe 2015 was when he was diagnosed, and lost his voice several years ago. Recently appeared in Top Gun Maverick, did a cameo in there that honestly I think is like the emotional heart of that movie in a lot of ways, and a lot of what I think makes that movie so successful. Also has a little bit of like, hey, Han Solo is back vibes, but is very charming, especially knowing his real life condition, and it was really, really, really sad to see the news of it. So rest in peace to Val Kilmer, and we'll be doing
he could be my Huckleberry.
Yeah, any day of the week. So we'll do a highlight of his movies at some point in the coming weeks and just talk about some of the things that he's been in and some of the things that mean the most to us. But rest in peace in the meantime. And on that note, we'll leave you guys with it. So hope you enjoyed. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you on the next go round.
Tune in for the next weekend roundup, boys.
Adios.